Hi everyone, welcome to another exciting edition. I am excited, honored on this episode of Words, Images, and Worlds to be talking with a force in the comics industry, someone who's certainly well known. And can I say legendary? I usually ask permission to say legendary.
You know what? Other people have said it. I'm learning to accept it, so that is fine. And thank you for your kindness.
Absolutely, absolutely. And of course, I'm talking with Mr. Joseph Illidge. Joseph, thank you for jumping in, joining, and bringing so many wonderful books with you, as well as a visual clue to your past here and there behind you as well.
You're welcome, and thanks for having me, Jason. Really enjoying it. And yeah, I love. I'm a book addict. It's an
Hmm.
it's an addiction that will not get me in any serious trouble. And I'm a kid of the 70s when I think the libraries had this program, and the saying was reading is fundamental.
I remember that. Yeah. Hmm.
So I really took that to heart, and I've just been an insane reader ever since. There was a 2 year hiatus in which I didn't read any books, and I promised myself that I would never ever make that crucial mistake again. But those are in my wild 20s, so I can forgive myself.
There was a brief time when I stopped reading comics as much, so I have a similar story. I was reading other things for college and stuff like that, but I learned to appreciate comics yet again.
That's what's up.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
always manage to bring you back somehow.
They do, absolutely. So you have this history in the industry. You are connected with Milestone, which was a big deal in the 90s and on into the early 2000s, and it's made a resurgence as well. And particularly a character, Static Shock, who is looking over your shoulder at the moment. And you
Yes.
also legendary work on Batman as an editor as well, and several titles, Birds of Prey, Batgirl. So your work is extensive in the comics world.
You so much. Yes, Milestone was really the best possible beginning of a career because I never saw anything like that. I had never seen a comic book company as a business
Mm-hmm.
owned by Black people with a diverse superhero universe, with a diverse staff. So, starting at Milestone, I couldn't have asked for anything better. The founders of Milestone were all amazing experts in their field. Derek T. Dingle, Dennis Cowan, Michael Davis, and of course, Dwayne McDuffie, who ended up being
Hmm.
a good friend and mentor to me and the person who showed me what being an editor was. And so he was the one that really put me on the path to that vocation, right? And Milestone was something that the comic book industry desperately needed. And it's kind of a thing where you don't realize how much something has been missing until the solution presents itself.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
then by virtue of its existence, compare it to everything and realize where everything was lacking, where it was vapid.
Hmm.
And so Milestone was really the proverbial pebble in the pond that is still making ripple effects to this day, 31 years later. And so to have begun my career there was an honor, and it was an adventure every day. There was fun and there was peril, but it's comics. So that's what you expect. But, my tutelage, my editorial tutelage under Dwayne McDuffie
Hmm.
really laid the groundwork for me to then go to DC Comics and become an editor in the Batman office. And we really made it was an amazing time. It was during the project No Man's Land. No Man's Land was a
Hmm.
1 year weekly storyline which really dealt with Batman and James Gordon, Gotham City, and the collapse of a society and the reintegration of society. And it was vast, and it didn't contextualize Batman within the superheroic world. It was very grounded very naturalistic. We were able to work with a bunch of creative talent that was either new to comics or new to superhero comics. And
Hmm.
so No Man's Land was amazing. Being able to work with the other Batman editors led by Denny O'Neil, God rest his soul. At that time, the Batman editorial office was called Camelot
Oh.
by the rest of the editorial team. So to have been a night at the round table was pretty amazing. And, that really paved the way for the year 2000 relaunch, in which we clearly defined all the books. Detective Comics by Greg Rucka and Sean Martinborough
Hmm.
became a crime noir book. Gotham Knights was a psychological book. Batman was really a superhero book. And so being able to bring in artists and bring in writers and bring in people from diverse backgrounds to Gotham City,
Hmm.
that was a personal and career mission for me, especially as I was the first editor of color in the Batman office, right?
Yeah.
And so
Huge.
I was able to bring a particular socially global perspective to Gotham. And that would really lead to some amazing characters who are still beloved today.
Hmm.
I still love when I see someone say Cassandra Cain is my favorite superhero,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
right? Because I'm kind of one of her uncles. I was there when Cassie was born, and that's what I do with some of these characters. I call them by their affectionate names, like the Birds of Prey duo. That's Dinah and Babs.
Hmm.
Batgirl
Hmm.
is Cassie. All that stuff, and so being able to be there at the birth of these characters that became so beloved and inspired people to write, or was the first time people saw a reflection of themselves culturally
Hmm.
as a superhero. These things matter. And so beginning that path, that was really, it was really great. There was nothing like it. And those would be the experiences that would lead me to here in the present day, right? Like
Hmm. Hmm.
31 years later, and the Milestone relaunch and the constant references and continued love for that particular era of Detective Comics. Those things are really heartwarming because when you're working on the stuff, you don't know that you're going to make a future impact. You're
Hmm.
just doing it month by month, right? And you're just trying to do the best work that you can. But to look decades later, see these stories collected, know that these stories were inspiration for creators whose work you admire, it's great. It's great. I love it.
Yeah, yeah. You mentioned the round table at Camelot, which just brings back this image I was looking at earlier today of the original JSA team in like
Oh my.
1941. Yeah,
Oh
and
man.
and and they're all dudes and they're all white, and that's
It's
it's
true.
yeah.
It's
I mean,
true.
there's a guy in a blue hood, but he's white under there, and
It's
so
true.
it's nice to see diversity and it's nice to see that increase, and there's certainly still a lot more room and a lot more work to do with it. But as somebody that's a teacher, I love when students can connect with the book and see themselves represented. So I love that you made that statement as well.
Yeah, we underestimate the importance of it,
Hmm. Hmm.
but these stories do inspire people, or these stories pull people out of an emotional hole where they're having a bad day, they're having a bad time, but they read something, it connects with them. And, it's like something that I've been hearing recently about our relationship with people,
Hmm. Hmm.
where what we will remember about people is not what their titles were, not what their net worth is, but how those people made us feel at a
Hmm.
certain time in our lives. And it's the same thing with stories.
Yeah.
That's what we remember, right? How did that story make us feel, right?
Hmm.
So that's
Hmm.
part of what we're doing here. And so, to your point about students, young people who really need to know that they're not alone in this world, it's absolutely crucial to be able to read stories and understand that what they're going through is part of a larger experience, right?
Mhm.
And they're part of a community. Even in their feelings that they're alone, they're part of a community.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you've connected to another passion point for me there, which is that comics can be about superheroes, but as you were talking about Camelot and the books that were part of that lineup that you were involved with, I love that you were pointing out the range of genres that are there. And I know that we're talking about a book on this episode called The Winterfields. And
Yes.
so I'm curious about this project, and I guess an initial question is how did this come to be?
So the Winterfields is a six-page story which is going to introduce the characters, and it's appearing in the expanded edition of an anthology book called Noir is the New Black,
Hmm.
which
Hmm.
is a book of various stories by Black creators. It's published by Fair Square Comics. And so the Winterfields came about because Black history is something that's very important to me. And as I get older and I see young people getting further away from history, that disconnectedness concerns me. And I
Hmm.
realize that we need stories to connect people back to their recent past, right? And one of the periods that has always interested me is the Harlem Renaissance,
Hmm. Hmm.
because that was this time where there was cultural explosion in music, art, philosophy, everything, writing. And that time is something that I don't feel like is explored enough,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? And so I've always wanted to do a story that takes place in the Harlem Renaissance. And so when Fabrice Sapolsky, the co-owner of Fair Square Comics, came to me with an opportunity to do a short story in Noir is the New Black, I realized, okay, this can be an opportunity for me to scratch that itch,
Hmm.
right? And introduce characters as what I'll call the cold open to the movie that's going to be the Winterfields graphic novel in 2025.
Love
And
it.
so
Love
in
it.
this six-page story, you meet a father and son, Kane Winterfield and Carver Winterfield. Kane is a former World War I soldier who fought for America, and then he came back home, and America still considered him two-thirds of a man. And
Hmm.
so he had to figure out his way. And so he became a bodyguard, and he's raising his 10-year-old son as a sole parent, right? And it's really this story that it's the quintessential crime story. You've got, you know, the peril, you've got a little bit of sex, you've got the drama, you've got the light beaming through the blinds. And so it's this story about an assignment gone wrong
Hmm.
and the consequences of that, like the immediate in real time consequences of that, and what happens when his son is pulled into it, right? Because as a father, that's the last thing you want. The last thing you want is for any of your decisions to put your child in peril.
Hmm.
When that happens, what's the consequences of it? And so the answer to that is going to really open the door for the graphic novel that is going to be a really big mystery that takes place right in the heart of the Harlem Renaissance in Harlem, New York. And, another thing is when I look at dynamics in characters, how characters of color are portrayed, what you don't really see a lot of is you don't see father and son stories. I was just talking with
Hmm.
a friend the other day, and something that we did not know at the time, but that history would reveal to us, is that the best Star Trek series ever created was Star Trek Deep Space Nine. This is indisputable. This is not
Uh-huh.
an
Uh-huh.
opinion. One of the 12 to 20 reasons that is so is because of the relationship between Commander Benjamin Sisko and his son Jake.
Yes. Uh-huh.
right?
Uh-huh.
That at the core of this story, this science fiction story, you didn't see that in Star Trek. You didn't see that in science fiction. You didn't see that in a lot of fiction. And it was
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that made Deep Space Nine kind of like this benchmark,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? And so I thought about that. I also thought about a graphic novel that I'm a big fan of that ended up spawning an amazing film called Road to Perdition by
Uh-huh.
Max
Yep.
Allan Collins and Richard Piers Rayner, which would then lead to the amazing film, which was directed by Sam Mendes, starring Tom Hanks, Paul Newman, and we would not know, but a future Superman named Tyler Hoechlin.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Right,
Mm-hmm.
right. And so I wanted to bring that kind of mystery to this, and I really want to explore parenthood in conditions of peril and
Mm-hmm.
what that means, right? So the Winterfields is a crime noir story that will kick off to the graphic novel coming out next year, and we'll have a real deep adventure with Kane and Carver.
I love that beginning with kind of a short story, like a glimpse of the story to come, and then continuing into a larger narrative that's very inviting way for readers to check out what it's all about.
Thank you. Yeah, I
Mhm.
like that idea too, right? Like of the short piece, like one of the things that I, compare it to is I remember, I don't know about you, but there was a point in time when I got tired of the James Bond films. Like,
Mhm.
Roger
Mhm.
Moore had become hokey. Timothy Dalton was great, but he didn't last long. Pierce Brosnan started off cool and then went sideways. And then here came the Daniel Craig films and the cold open to Casino Royale
Yeah.
that told you all that you needed to know about no this is a down and dirty Bond, and this is
Mhm.
actually the beginning of him, right? That was his what we saw was his second kill. We saw his first kill in flashback and his
Mhm.
second kill in real time, but to me that intro was kind of like a short film in and of itself,
Absolutely. Yeah.
right? And then when you see the whole thing, you're like, I get the meaning of this scene. So that's how I look at what we're doing with the Winterfield. And we is myself and illustrator Crisscross.
Mhm. Mhm.
And Crisscross is a veteran of the industry. He's drawn for all the major companies and characters. He just finished working on Star Wars and working on Edge of the Spider-Verse. And he and I go back to the Milestone days when he was the artist of Blood Syndicate
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
I was just getting on the road to being an editor. And so he and I have always wanted to really dig our teeth into something collaboratively and also challenge each other. And Chris has done so many things in comics, but he's not done crime noir yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he's having a lot of fun stretching some new muscles and me being able to write something for him that he can have fun with, that he can be challenged by, and then he'll surprise me because he'll do his pages and they'll just make me look better as a writer because that's what amazing artists do in comics. They make writers look better. And so our friendship and our collaborative relationship and the kind of things we're interested in really dig into this,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And so that's also, part of the joy of this is being able to work with an artist that I can throw anything at that person and what they throw back at me is going to be 5 times better than
Mhm.
what I threw at them.
Mhm.
Right. So, yeah. So I'm hoping everyone's going to like it. I think some people may go yeesh when they get to the end. I'm not sure. We'll see. But what I definitely feel like is that once people finish reading this short story, they're going to want to know more about these two and they're going to care about them. And
Mhm.
that's where it starts, right? That's where any story starts, right? Like you have to care first and then we'll go on the ride together,
Yeah.
right? So that's it.
Love it. I love the empathy of that father-son relationship. love that you pointed out Daniel Craig because he also got his start in Road to Perdition, or
Yes,
that was
he
one of his
did.
films. Yeah,
Yes, he
um,
did. How about that? Right?
yeah,
So Road to Perdition is kind of like this.
it's
There's a
circular.
Venn diagram happening there.
Yes, yes. And I also love the grounded storytelling that you were leading off with, talking about No Man's Land and how that just connects so well to thinking about this story. And it sounds like definitely a way of expanding comics. And you mentioned the Harlem Renaissance, so definitely sharing a story that isn't often told. I mean, I teach Harlem Renaissance and teach about the Harlem Renaissance, but I feel like we only glimpse it, and so it's really I'm excited to see how you take up that time period and how it appears in the comics page.
Thank you. And yeah, my time on Batman, there's a straight line from there to here because, some of the Batman stories that I worked on that I really have the most affection for was Batman the Hill with Christopher Priest,
Hmm.
which was
Hmm.
about Batman having to confront his own institutional prejudices regarding Black America because he had to go to this part of Gotham called the Hill that he never went to. When he goes there, the Black people aren't afraid of him because he's never been there. He's never
Hmm.
been
Hmm.
protecting them. And so, working on a story like that editorially, working on Detective Comics with Greg Rucka, and Sean Martinborough was the artist for both Batman the Hill and Detective Comics, and how Greg really made Detective Comics a detective story. It was about the
Hmm.
detectives of the Gotham City Police Department. And so, Greg ended up leading me on a path that led me to Dennis Lehane, who, as far as I'm concerned, is one of the best crime novelists alive. And Dennis Lehane would end up leading me on a road to Lee Child.
Hmm.
And then you know how that goes. Once you read your first Reacher novel, you're forever hooked. And so, yeah, there's this line throughout my career about these grounded stories. And again, being able to do this one, which is very grounded. And even though I've had a career which has involved a lot of superhero stories, to be able to do something very, very human, that's an exciting challenge to me because then you don't have being able to leap over tall buildings in a single bound as a crutch. You don't have a millionaire's budget for an amazing arsenal of technology as a crutch.
Hmm.
You only got what's here and what's here, and your physical strength and your wits. And so I dig that. I dig that.
Yeah, yeah. The heart of human storytelling. Absolutely, I
Yeah.
love it. I love it.
Yeah.
So I think the last question, unless we have anything in the talk through that we've missed, would be I was going to ask what your current creative passion and pursuit is, but you have a graphic novel on the way, so I think
Yes.
that answers that. Uh,
Yes. Yes. But also, it's interesting with the Winterfields coming in 2025. I have another one coming out in 2026, which is going to be Harriet Tubman.
oh
And
wow,
so
wow.
I'm going to be writing the official adaptation of the Harriet Tubman novel by author Ann Petrie. And so that is something that I am deep in the weeds with now, learning so much about this woman that I've read about,
Hmm.
but now really getting to deeply understand her layers and working on that, working on the Winterfields. I have some other projects that are going to be coming out in the next few years that are going to be announced. I'm working with Ahoy Comics and I'm doing a short story there. I love this challenge of short stories. Like, it's
Yeah.
like everyone usually gets 20 to 24 pages, but what if you only get 6 to 11?
Hmm. Hmm.
What are you going to do with that, right? And
Hmm.
so I'm working on a horror story now that speaks to my Jamaican American heritage and speaks to being born and raised here in Brooklyn, New York. So that's going to be coming out in March. Ahoy has a series called Project Cryptid. So again, there's this theme of grounded stories, there's this theme of history,
Hmm.
and both of those things are exciting, right? I love I love doing research to the point where you can get lost in research and
Yeah.
you just have to and you I'm sure know this as a teacher, you just have to say, okay, stop. I have to
Uh-huh.
create the lesson plan or I have to create the curriculum. Or for me, it's like, okay, you have to start writing the story now because you could just do research for another 3 to 4 months, right?
Oh yeah.
But what you learn from it is really fascinating. And part of what you learn from it is that we exist in social cycles. Things that are
Hmm.
happening now that you think are new are not new. They're echoes,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what I'm having fun with now, and writing a column for Popverse about the behind the scenes of the comic book industry as it relates to the careers of veterans, people coming in, and the whole conversation about career, finance, and how as creators we've been trained to see ourselves as labor, but
Hmm.
now there's this big discussion throughout all the entertainment circles about, the value of the creator,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And and how can a person have a healthy career? What is the relationship between the creator and the company in the future? So that's part of what I'm exploring with my column in Popverse. So that's really it. And besides that, every week I'm buying something at my local comic book stores. I stopped being a Wednesday warrior and now I'm a Wednesday warrior again. I didn't think that would
Nice.
happen, but it has happened. But other than that, just reading some really amazing graphic novels out there now that Criminal by Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips
Hmm.
is
Hmm.
going to be an Amazon series. Don't you know? I just got myself like some Criminal hardcovers and I just want to dive into, and that'll also be inspirational because when you're talking about crime noir and graphic novels, Ed Brubaker is the champion.
Hmm.
Also an
Absolutely.
indisputable fact, right?
Yes.
Like
Yes.
he's the tip of the spear. So I totally want to, as Daniel Day-Lewis said in There Will Be Blood, I want to like stick a big straw in like his work and like drink his milkshake, right?
Yes.
So I just want to
Absolutely.
suck all I can out of the vibe of the amazing work he did with stuff like Sleeper and Criminal and Incognito and The Fade Out,
Hmm.
and see what I can do.
Love it. I love it. And love how the comics, the Wednesday Warrior thing came back as we were talking about as
I
well.
did not see that happening, man. I
Yeah.
thought I was done because I love bookshelves more than I love long boxes. But
Right.
but then these publishers go and surprise me. I mean,
Hmm.
Skybound just surprised me with a G.I. Joe comic book. Duke #1 is one of the best first issues I've read in like 3 years.
Nice. Nice.
And it's just good and you can see the love, and I'm just like, you know what, I'm not waiting for collections. Add this to my pull list. I want it every 31 days. So
Hmm.
that's what
Hmm.
happens. I think I'm gone, but some good stuff comes out and it's like, all right, let's go.
Yeah, yeah, and I can't wait for that trade all the time either. I enjoy the trades, but still got to get the floppies every now and then.
Yeah, sometimes you need the monthly experience, and look, there are people out there, they're giving their all for the serialized experience.
Hmm.
So that I will still selectively engage that. I feel like I'm still part of the community in that way and I'm making a contribution. But for other people, for some writers, I feel like collected is better. Like with the exception of the Human Target, I feel
Hmm.
like with Tom King, it's got to be collected.
Yeah,
In a
yeah.
way, even though it may emotionally pulverize you, like there's something about just going right through, man. Like
Hmm.
I read most of the Adam Strange story that he and Mitch Gerads did, Strange Adventures. I read
Uh-huh.
11 issues worth in 3 hours. I didn't go to bed till I think 3 in the morning, right?
Yes,
So
yes,
that's part of the fun of just having it all in a book.
yes. And Tom King will keep you up for sure, for sure.
He will bust you up. that is that is a fact. But to take it all back, that experience of the one read,
Hmm.
that's part of the reason why I'm really excited that Chris Cross and I are going to be able to do the Winterfields with Fair Square Comics as a real graphic novel.
Hmm. Hmm.
Sit down, it's the one dose, it's the one shot. And when you leave it, hopefully you'll want some more, and then that's another conversation. But the graphic novel is really an amazing art form and an amazing medium. And I'm looking forward to having some more fun with it.
Yeah, yeah. I'm looking forward to getting my straw and putting it in the book. And how did you put that?
That's it. Just
That's
take the
right,
straw.
drinking up the milkshake. I love it.
Like drink the milkshake
Yeah,
of it. That's it. That's it. That's part of the fun.
yeah, yeah. Social media spaces that you want to mention or websites before we close.
Oh, sure. So on Facebook, I'm Joe Illidge, whatever we call it these days. Twitter X, I'm
Uh-huh.
Joseph P. Illidge. On Blue Sky, I think I'm Joseph P. Illidge. On LinkedIn, I'm Joseph Philip Illidge. On Instagram, I'm Illmaster1 because I had to shake it up a bit. You gotta have some
Nice, nice.
fun.
I like it.
Um, I have a TikTok. I'm about 10 minutes away from diving into TikTok.
Yes,
But
yes.
basically on most of the other platforms people can find me. Sorry, I'm not on Threads. I can only do so much.
Okay.
Sorry. You will
You're
not
on the
find
29 other ones. It's great.
exactly. You will not find me there, but you can find me in a bunch of other places. And my website is josephillage.com.
All right. Well, Joseph, thank you so much for the talk. Thank you for the work. And I am really excited to share this with my students as well. I have to say, to bring the graphic novel form into the classroom and to show a different side of history in the Harlem Renaissance. I'm pretty excited about that. So
Well, thank
thank
you
you for
so
that
much.
as well.
Now, how old are your students?
Oh, they are high school, so
Awesome.
juniors, yeah, sophomores.
Good.
So yes,
Good.
yes,
Okay. Just wanted to make sure. So
yes.
that's good. So please let me know what they think, and I hope you enjoy it.
All right. Thank you so much. I will do that.